Okay, everyone, welcome. We are just going to wait a couple more minutes, just give some people a chance to join. I understand it can be a challenge to get the link and all that. So we are going to give it a couple more seconds. And can you guys see my screen okay? Feel free to drop in the chat if you can see me, hear me, make sure we're all technically functional. Go ahead and drop it in the chat if you can see and hear me. Okay, cool. Thanks, Katerina. Perfect. You can see and hear me. Okay. Just going to wait a couple more minutes. If everybody else can take this time to put themselves on mute, just so we don't have as much background noise, that would be fantastic. Okay. Right, looks like we've got. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure people will trickle in as we go, but who's excited? I know that we're just talking about visas, and visas aren't always considered to be that fun of a topic, but I'm actually really pumped. I have so much helpful information that I genuinely wish I had. Awesome, Eden. Super excited to learn. Love that. Yes. Okay. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen. And while I do this, I do want to say, guys, let's keep the vibe fun, interactive. There will be time for questions at the end, but feel free to drop them in like the chat as we go so that I can find them later so that you don't forget them. And yeah, we're going to have so much fun, guys. Oh, I'm pumped. Okay, give me a second while I share my screen and my presentation and admit more people. Okay, there's a lot happening here, Okay. This is not the first slide. Shoot, sorry. This is my first day doing this, so you guys are going to get all the kinks. Let's just embrace that now. If there's any technical issues, there will be a recording. There's another session tomorrow. We're not going to panic. We are not going to panic. We are going to have fun. Okay, so what happened to it? Here it is. Stop it. Oh, because I can't. Okay, hold on, everyone. Hold on. I'm getting a bunch of people coming into the room and it is messing up the screen share. Okay, let's try now. Oh, nope, more people. Okay. Why is this happening? Hold on, guys. We're going to stop the screen share and do it again. Okay, in the meanwhile, there's always going to be something that goes wrong, right? While I am getting this up, go ahead and drop in the chat what you are most excited about, like, learning today. What are you interested in? Are you looking to move to Korea, work in Korea, study in Korea? Just kind of want to learn? Okay, this is really getting to be a problemo. What is happening? What is happening? Hold on, everyone. Hold on. Okay. I don't know why it was doing that. Let's try again. Share screen. Here we go. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Go ahead and drop it in the chat. Just want to make sure that we've all got it. All right, perfect. Visa options that are more suited to your future dreams. Working holiday visa. Ooh, starting in January, that's coming up. This is the perfect time to learn about visas. Okay, we are going to address all of these things. And without further ado, because I do want to obviously respect all of your guys' time and my own time, we are going to get started. So welcome to the Korean Visa Masterclass. This is the first one I'm doing, but I'm kind of excited about it. So I expect to do more different kinds of masterclasses. I personally am in Korea right now. I'm in Busan. I am going to be starting my time at Busan National University studying Korean. Oh, my name is Dana. Hi, I'm Dana. And I am really, really excited. I love Korea. I love being here. But this process was not necessarily the easiest, the most straightforward. It can be complicated, right? So I've got you. I'm gonna help you out. Okay. First, let's set expectations. I want to be very clear that I am not a legal or immigration expert. I have done probably 20 years of research on visas with my dreams of moving all over the world, not just to Korea. I know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, I am not a legal expert, and visa requirements literally change all the time. They could be writing a new law tonight and pass it tomorrow, and that could change all of the visa requirements as far as we go, right? So always, always, always check the official sites to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. And last expectation, of course, there's going to be a Q&A at the end, but I'm only human. I am not a walking AI encyclopedia. I will not know everything, all right? I don't hold the expectation of myself to know everything there is to know about visas, but I should be able to get you at least in the right direction, which is better than nothing. So here is what we are going to go over today. We are going to go over different visas and their requirements, the process to apply for a visa, things to consider before going to Korea. I think Korea in particular gets overly romanticized because of K-dramas, right? We love them. But it's important to take everything with a grain of salt. And then, of course, again, there's going to be a Q&A at the end. Also, if anybody finds this useful or beneficial, there is going to be a written version of this guide with the same kind of like knowledge information. The requirements don't change, of course, but it may be helpful for you to see them. There will be checklists in there, worksheets in there to help figure out what is the best course of action for you. So that will be, I'll drop the link if anybody's interested towards the end of this session. So again, I just want to say, I don't want to get myself in trouble. This is not immigration or legal advice, okay? I know what I'm talking about, but I am not a legal expert in any way. Okay, so first, things you are going to want to consider. This is, again, so important. I think when anybody is trying to move abroad or has the goal to move abroad, you want to move abroad most likely because of the pros of that country. And sometimes we either aren't aware of or don't think as much about the cons. And this is true for any country, but again, particularly Korea can get a little bit overly romanticized. So you're going to want to pay attention. And I've tried to give a really balanced view here of all of the positives and all of the negatives. And a top tip to see where you kind of fall and if this is the right country for you would be to make a list of everything that matters to you, your work-life balance, your kind of community that you want to have, the environment you want to be living in, and see where you think Korea would align or not align. So that's just the top tip. That's what I did before I decided if Korea was like actually a place that I wanted to be. So the first thing is going to be the working culture. Now, I think a lot of this is always going to depend on the types of companies that you work for and even like the managers. I think this is going to be true in every country. I'm sure, go ahead and drop in the chat if you have had a manager that you absolutely hated working for. The likelihood of that is just, yes, I am sure we all have. The likelihood of that is just as common as possible in Korea as it is in Germany or France or the US or Brazil or wherever you are in the world, right? But it is true that Korea does have a pretty intense work culture. On average, they work the longest hours of any like majorly developed country. Somebody has a rough manager in Korea. The hours can be long. Again, it will depend on the kind of company that you have. My boyfriend works pretty standard 8 hours a day, some days a little bit longer. However, the work culture dictates that you are kind of always on call. There's this idea that if your boss calls at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday, you're going to answer. If he calls at 11 a.m. on a Saturday, you're going to answer. That is kind of true across the board from what I've been able to tell. Another thing that you may come across are things like company dinners, which are slowly fading out, particularly since the end of COVID, but can still be a thing, again, depending on where you're working, which is where your manager will take everyone out to dinner. And now this is voluntary, but if you want to develop camaraderie, be seen as a good team player, know what it is that your boss has said. Maybe it's important. Maybe it's a story that's going to become an inside joke amongst the team for years to come or whatever. You kind of have to go. And that being said, the culture at these events, these like company dinners, tends to be very alcohol heavy. Again, this is slowly starting to change, but something to keep in mind if you're absolutely like, no, because it's considered rude to refuse something that is offered to you. So if you are offered alcohol, you are expected to take it. If you are offered alcohol 10 times, you're expected to take it 10 times. And the culture is very much like binge drinking kind of vibes. So again, that's something to consider. Long hours, company dinners, as well as a kind of strict hierarchy. This, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record with saying how many of these things are changing and are going to depend on the individual company, but it is true. So I'm going to keep saying it. Sorry. The issue is that your boss is going to be, the boss is going to be whoever's worked there the longest. Under him is going to be who's ever worked there the second longest, and so on and so forth. The hierarchy, the promotion structure isn't so much based on skills as it is at time at the company. You will also be expected to address your boss by his job title. So it wouldn't be like, hey, Joe, my manager's name used to be Joe. Hey, Joe. It would be, hi, Manager Joe, probably by last name. So hi, Manager Smith. And that kind of creates a bit of a divide between levels, between coworkers. It's not so much of a collaborative environment as much as it is your boss tells you what to do and you execute. It's not really in the culture to question your boss, to go out and do things on your own without prior approval or permission. Again, all of this is going to depend on your manager and your company. But that's kind of the way that things are and that things have been for the past like several decades. Companies are starting to change it because everybody realizes that this sucks and it doesn't work. So changes are coming. Big companies are starting to rework the structure, get rid of the titles, all of that stuff, but it's going to take some time. Okay. I know I dived really deep into the work culture, but it is quite different than what I know I was used to in the States, and what you may be used to. So I don't want anybody going in with unfair expectations. And for those of you who are currently in Korea, let me know if you agree or disagree with anything that I've just said. Again, I am not all-knowing. I am totally open to people poking holes in what I'm saying. So let me know if you agree or disagree while we dive into the next topic, which is the study culture. If you are looking to study in Korea, whether that be university or undergrad, graduate, study abroad, expect to study a lot. Koreans have essentially been like raised to study. It's a skill. They probably since kindergarten have been going to school and then academies after school to study further. Some go as late as 10 p.m. So they have this study culture that is also rather intense, rather long hours. If you are looking to study Korean, This is a little bit less true. This is a little bit less important because while of course you will still have to study grammar and vocab and do your homework, it's not nearly as competitive, and it's not like for a degree, right? It's for just a language program certificate. You're also not with other Koreans, you're with other foreigners who are learning the language. So you have a lot more freedom if you're studying the language versus if you're like going to Korea to get a degree. Your degree will determine what kind of job you get outside of school. So that's the reason for a lot of the competition and the hustle that exists in the university study culture. Okay. Oh, knowing. Okay. The importance of knowing Korean. How many of you, and go ahead and drop it in the chat, I'd like to keep this interactive. How many of you have been to another country where the primary language was not your language? So maybe you're from India and you went to France, or maybe you're from France and you went to Brazil. Let me know, one, where you went, because I love to travel, and two, what that experience was like for you. I'll go ahead and give you a second to type it out, what the experience was like being in another country, not knowing the language. So go ahead and let me know in the chat what your thoughts were while I take a sip of water. Okay. I will have to take many sips of water. I can't talk that long without water. So in Korea, probably a little bit more so than some other countries, and also less so than some other countries, Korean is going to be very important. Just last week, the government announced that they were going to be prioritizing visas for foreigners who already spoke Korean. The goal here is assimilation more than integration. They want you to adapt to their culture. They want you to adapt to their language. And so Korean is very widely, not just very widely spoken, it's the main language here. And if you want to go like to the doctors, if you want to read the emergency notes that the government sends about the weather, if you want to be able to truly navigate Naver maps, Korean is pretty essential. Can you get away with English? Yes. Can you get away with using translation services at hospitals for doctor's appointments, or, Google Translate on your phone? Yes. But if you really want to get to know Korea and the people and the history and the culture, the language is a huge, huge part of that. It's huge. So let's see. Ambika said she went to Japan and didn't know Japanese, and back then, so it was difficult to communicate. Yes, exactly. Difficult to communicate. Merlin Owadi, hopefully I said that right. Went from Indonesia to the US. It was making me silent for a while to adjust to my English skills and confidence level. Yeah, exactly. These are exactly the kinds of things that will be true also in Korea, just like anywhere else where you don't necessarily know the language. Absolutely true. So, discrimination. This is something that okay, I'm clearly, oops, dearie me, I've messed that up. I need to go back. I'm clearly a white girl from the United States. I am less likely to face discrimination than the typical groups, right? Based on skin color, education, money. That's going to be true in Korea, just like it is, unfortunately, everywhere else in the world. I will say that I do feel like Korea gets a little bit of an extra bad rap here. And my reason for thinking is that Korea doesn't have a lot of experience with other cultures. It has a long history, but a relatively isolated history. It doesn't have decades or even longer, hundreds of years of tourists coming to the country. And so, to be honest, it has a bit of an ignorance towards other cultures. It doesn't really consider what would be rude or what would be appropriate in other cultures, like we may be used to in more diverse societies. But that being said, there also isn't, they don't have the history to really have developed a huge hatred towards anybody. They don't have decades and decades of systemic racism built in, where there have been, again, decades of animosity and negative feelings. So again, is there discrimination? Absolutely. Of course there is. But it isn't, it's discrimination based on ignorance and misunderstanding more than hatred. And I 100% agree. Any discrimination is not okay. Not okay. But I do think the motivation behind it does matter a little bit. Now, that being said, what kind of discrimination can all or most foreigners expect? Some clubs and bars do not let in foreigners. I don't know why. I have yet to figure that out, because even if you speak Korean, you won't be allowed in. And sometimes even if you are like an American Korean American, so you are like an American and Korean citizen, if you're like traveling on your American passport, they won't let you in. I don't know why. The other instance that can happen is some landlords will refuse to rent to foreigners. This is a small percentage of them, but they do exist, and it's important to consider. I think that just has to do with the landlord's past experience, as well as the like their own fear of being unable to communicate. So that's like a language fear. So again, discrimination exists. It's not as hate-filled as it is in a lot of the rest of the world. So with that introduction aside, let's go ahead and dive in to the main visa types that we are going to be covering today: D2, D4, D10, H1, E2, and E7. I'm going to try and go through each of them fully, but briefly, so that if you're not interested in that visa, you're not like bored out of your mind, okay? So first, before you know, some things that are going to be critical for all visas is whoever is sponsoring your visa, whether that be a university or whether that be a company, you're kind of going to be at their mercy. You get kicked out of school, if you get fired from your job or whatever, you are going to lose your sponsorship, and you are therefore going to lose that visa. But just something to keep in mind. The documentation process, almost all documents will need to be originals. So you can't photocopy. If it needs like a diploma, you gotta like email your university and be like, hey, I need another copy of my diploma. And you will probably need to take that to a government office and get an apostille. I had never heard of that word before I did my whole Korean visa stuff. It's essentially just a verification that one government says, yes, foreign government, this is a real document. That's it. You can Google apostille in, name your city, name your country, and it will give you a list of resources of where to go to get that. Picking a school. There are there are three main schools: Seoul University, Korea University, and Yonsei University. Those are the three like Ivy League schools here in Korea. After that, there's anything in Seoul. And after that, there's everything else in the country is kind of like tier 3. The further down the tier you go, the less expensive and the less competitive that university will be. Again, language schools doesn't really apply. Almost all language schools function the exact same way. The programs are almost exactly the same setup. The only difference is always going to be like the teacher themselves. So you don't need to worry too much if it's a language school. Now, finding a company. I will probably mention this later as well, but there are 3 main job sites in Korea. One is LinkedIn. The other is a company called Seramin. And then there is People in Job. The last 2 of those companies are websites are very Korean heavy. It will take you a couple of days to figure out how everything goes. My initial plan was to start coming here for a job, and these websites are very difficult to navigate. I recommend opening them in Chrome so that you can get the visa, the auto translation. But that process is going to be just like it. Well, we'll talk about it later. I won't go into it now. Okay, D2 visa. This is your study visa for undergrad, graduate degree, or study abroad. If anybody has studied at a Korean university, go ahead and let me know what your experience was like. I'd love to know, just for my own interests, but also it could be really helpful to some people who are maybe considering studying right now. You will not be able to work on this visa for at least 6 months. And only then, once you are approved by your university and immigration. Both of them have to be on board. And the kind of work you can do is limited to part-time cafes, editing, translation, no teaching, nothing like that. Just kind of part-time, normal student jobs. And then the last thing is, sorry, everything is in the way, so I can't see it. Look at the cost of living. This is really important. Look at the cost of living in the city that you are interested in studying in, and make sure you have the funds to support yourself. This is obviously going to be true across the board, but Seoul is most expensive. And then you've got all of the other cities, and then you've got kind of more rural areas. Can I just put in a plug to consider areas outside of Seoul? I love Seoul. It's great. It's really like cosmopolitan. If you like want to shop and go to history museums every day, then it's your place. If you're more into like nature and like the true heart of the country, consider Busan, consider Gyeongju, Daegu. I love living in Busan. That's the place that I have the most experience with. It's like my mission to put it on the map more than it already is on the map, because I truly love it. It's gorgeous. There's so much nature. The cafes are just as aesthetic and beautiful. I'm going to get off my soapbox, but don't just look at Seoul because it's Seoul. There's a lot of other great options out there that are going to be easier to get into because they aren't as competitive as Seoul. So the requirements, I have these broken up into kind of 2 sections. The top purple is required for everybody, and the bottom bits are required for only certain countries. So your general requirements, visa application form, pretty straightforward. That's the same visa application form for like every visa, by the way. In my in the ebook guide that I made, that again will be, I'll drop the link for you guys to buy later. I have linked that visa form. There's only one visa form. You're going to need a passport. You're going to need to pay the fee, which is about 60 to 90 US dollars. You're going to need a photo so that they can put it on your visa card that you get. You're going to need a certificate of admission. So this is just a document that the university will provide you saying like, yes, Jomana is really going to our university. We did accept her. And then a copy of the business registration of the Korean school. So basically documented evidence that the school actually exists. If you are from one of these 19 countries, you will need a tuberculosis test. And if you are from one of these 21 countries, you will need a final academic credentials, basically a transcript, and you will need to show proof of funds. Those are your requirements. Pretty straightforward. Always, 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 again, these could change overnight if the Korean government decided to change the laws. So always, always, always check the embassy, your local Korean embassy. So it would be like the Korean embassy in Hamburg or the Korean embassy in Delhi, wherever you are. And their website should have the most updated requirements. The process. Okay. Pretty straightforward, but I'm going to go through it anyway because I know this can be really intimidating for a lot of people. It was so intimidating for me. I'm a lot of people. I hope everybody is like me. First, find your university. Second, prepare your documents. The documents that you will need for your university application are obviously going to be different for each university. But in general, you will need an application, a bank statement showing $10,000 to $20,000, evidence that you have graduated high school. Got to make sure you graduate high school. Certificate of attendance. This is a document. I don't know what Korea is exactly looking for here, but something to show that you went to your school. You may need to write like your high school or go to your high school and be like, hey, can you pull my attendance records and just print that out? Your transcript, evidence of Korean proficiency. If you want to study and get a degree in Korea, you will need to know Korean because the classes are going to be in Korean. The material is going to be in Korean. You may get away if it is like English, you're studying English or you're studying French or something like that. But in general, you would need evidence of Korean proficiency, photocopy of your passport and birth certificate. Then you are going to apply, preferably 3 to 4 months in advance before the start of the semester. Every university is going to be different. Don't take my word for it. Look on their websites. Apply for the visa. Once you're accepted into the university program and the university has provided you with those documents, you can make an appointment at your local Korean embassy. Again, this is going to be the Korean embassy in New York, the Korean embassy in Los Angeles. They will have a website, and on that website, you will be able to book an appointment. Then you can finally book flights and move to Korea. This point is going to be in almost all of these processes, by the way. Okay, D4. This is the visa that I am going to be on. I don't have it yet, but it is the visa to come and study Korean. Don't stress too much about the exact program. They are all broken into the exact same way. They're 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 2 hours of grammar and vocabulary, 1 hour of reading and writing, and 1 hour of speaking and listening. That's how they all are. I went to Yonsei University's language program for a bit. It was the exact same way. And I asked specifically the people there, I was like, are all of the programs like this? And they're like, yeah, they are. Yes, they are all pretty much the same. Also on this visa, just like the D2 visa, you cannot work right away. You have to be here for at least 6 months before you are allowed to work. So make sure you have sufficient funds. That's what that $10,000 that they asked for the D2, and they will ask you for again, is meant to prove that you can support yourself for 6 months without needing a job. Requirements, nice, simple, straightforward, to the point. Visa application form, passport, photo, certificate of admission. Again, that will be what your university provides to you. A copy of the business registration for your university. They will provide that as well. And the fee, usually about 45 to 60 US dollars. Process. Find your university, particularly for the language schools, since it doesn't matter as much in terms of like major and career services and stuff like that. Maybe consider going outside of Seoul, since the programs are exactly the same. And since you do have, I don't know, a little bit more freedom to choose, go on an adventure, go somewhere. Everybody goes to Seoul, be different. It's really up to you. Prepare your documents for your application. These are also going to look very similar to the D2 visa. Application form, like your university application form, bank certificate with $10,000. They say bank certificate. I copied these exactly from the websites. They mean a statement, a bank statement. So print one out. Copy of your passport, birth certificate, again, an original. So you're going to have to like write the town that you were born in and say, hi, can I have a duplicate, please? And a letter of self-introduction. Not always required, but my university required that. So I put it. Then apply to the program. In my opinion, the application process is kind of like short. You have basically like a 2-week time frame to kind of apply, usually about 2 months before the start of the program. And then you will know about a week later, and then about a week after that, they're going to send you your documents. Make your appointment right away because timing is short. However, if you are, the D4 visa is one of the very few visas. This does not apply for all visas. I will say that again, this does not apply for all visas, but the D4 visa you can apply for in Korea. So if for some reason your visa is taking a little bit longer, don't panic. You can come to Korea and they will give you your visa here. You'll just have to make an appointment, obviously, instead of at the embassy, on a website called Hi Korea. Oh gosh, I feel like I'm talking in such a boring manner about this. Are you all with me? Is it making sense? Is it helpful information? Drop in the chat how it's going so far. Just doing like a little mid-session check-in. Okay, thank you. Rhea, am I saying that right? Rhea, correct me, please. I obviously want to say everybody's names right because that matters to me. Okay. Thank you, Katerina, as well. Good. Once you get your visa, oh, good. Okay, this is my first one, guys, so I was a little bit nervous. Thank you for the affirmation helpfulness here. Thank you. Book flights, move to Korea. Once all of these visas, actually, I will give this as kind of like an overarching thing. Once you get the visa, I don't know why, but oftentimes they expect you to kind of turn around and just be in Korea, like pick up your life and move. So while you're waiting, it's a good idea to start packing. It's a good idea to start researching the different like living apartments and different rental systems. Honestly, I think I may do a whole separate masterclass on the rental structure here because it's completely different to anywhere else in the world. But do not sign any apartment documents until you have seen the apartment. There's so many scams, guys. So many scams. Do not, like, anything you look at online is not trustworthy. You have to do it here. So what I would do is I would book a hotel or an Airbnb for a couple of weeks. Literally 2 weeks is all that it takes. And find an apartment when you arrive. Okay, next. D10. This is a little known, but I think potentially very helpful visa. This is the job seeker visa. So you can actually live in Korea after you complete school or at the end of a previous job contract in order to look for a job. You can live in Korea while you look for a job. There is a lot of documentation that needs to go into this, and the requirements are a bit finicky, shall we say? But it can be a great option, I think. Keep in mind that you can accept internships, and they are beginning to implement part-time work during your job hunt. So this is something that was just recently announced. It is not that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like live. It sometimes it can take days, sometimes it can take years from when they announce something for it to be like official in the system, live policy, if that makes sense. But again, you will be able to start working part-time while you look for a job. Okay, the requirements. So these are a little bit different. You have to have one of these top 5 things. You have to have them. If you don't have one of these 5, don't bother down here. You have to have been employed at a Fortune 500 company for more than 1 year in the past 3 years. You need to have graduated from a university on the Times Higher World University Rankings list, usually the top 200. You need to be a graduate of a local Korean university. You need to be a current e-visa employee. We're going to touch on some of the e-visas coming up. Or 60 points in the in the Korean visa system. Again, this is all, the points system is really difficult for me to lay out in a PowerPoint presentation like this because it's so complex. It's much better laid out in the ebook guide that I have. But just to give you a brief rundown, for example, it is broken down if like age, education, Korean ability. Did your country participate in the Korean War as an ally, not on the part of North Korea? You have to have been on the side of South Korea. Each of those like will have a certain point structure. So for example, age 18 to 24. I know because I just made the guide and I just read this like 12,000 times. 18 to 24 is 23 points, 25 to 29, 25 points. 30 to 34, 23 points, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? There's not a real good way for me to lay this out for you. But you take where you qualify. So I am 25 to 29, and I am from the United States. So my country participated in the Korean War, that's 20 points. And then you add, I have a bachelor's degree, that's 15 points. You add up all of these points and you end up with 60 points, and you will qualify for a D10 visa. There's a lot of points up for grabs there, so don't stress. If you're like, that sounds scary. Literally your age could be a third of your points. If you need more information about that, just Google like Korean visa point system, and it will like lay it out visually for you. I made a whole worksheet where you can like check off which one you are and then add it up because it's a little bit complex. In addition to having one of those, let's say, if you have one of those, you can then apply, which will lead you to the following requirements: completed visa application, passport photo, and passport. You need like a separate little photo. Flight itinerary. Do not buy your flights. Do not buy your flights. You just have to show them, hey, this is my plan of when I'm going to arrive, how I'm going to get there, et cetera, et cetera. A letter that includes your job seeking or training plan. There is a document that the Korean government provides. It's linked in my ebook. But again, you can always just Google it if you needed it. And then the visa fee. This varies by country, so I couldn't give you a really good number here. And then again, you're going to have to prove whatever of these five criteria. You're going to have to prove it, right? So if you worked at a Fortune 500 company, you're going to need some sort of career certificate, employment certificate, pay stubs, whatever, from your past job showing that you were in fact employed there with the dates of employment. And then recent graduates, your diploma with the apostille that we talked about in the beginning. Process. There's two ways to do this. You can, again, given that you may graduate from a Korean university or leave a Korean job, you can do this from inside of Korea, or you can do this from outside of Korea. So if you are outside of Korea, prepare the documents and make an appointment at your local embassy. And once you get your visa, you can book your flights. Do not book them beforehand, just in case you are not approved. And then from inside Korea, you're going to need to prepare any additional documents. Just because you're already in Korea doesn't mean that you won't need to prove those first 5 things. You're going to need that no matter what. So prepare those documents. Try and book well in advance. You do not want your current visa to expire before you apply for your D10 visa. Apply beforehand. But appointments fill up. So if you have to, you can show up the day your visa expires or the day before your visa expires, and just kind of walk in. But I honestly don't know if I can think of anything more stressful than that. So I would not advise. I would advise trying to book an appointment well in advance to transfer from whatever visa you're on to a D10 visa. You cannot show up as a tourist and apply for a D10 visa. Can't do that. But once your visa is approved, if you are not already in the country, go ahead and book your flights and start your Korean adventure. Am I talking too fast? I probably am. I'm from New Jersey. Okay, H1. I know that, I believe was it Katerina who said that she was interested in this? Trinity. Trinity was interested in this. So let's do this. This is the working holiday visa. In my opinion, the fun visa. You can stay for up to a year traveling to different parts of Korea. You can spend 3 months in one city, 3 months in another, and you are allowed to work part-time jobs, cafes, restaurants, maybe tour guides, those kinds of part-time jobs. Cannot teach, you cannot do any kind of like professional work. So you can't, like, as far as I know, internships not allowed, those kinds of things. Now, this is only available to 25 countries who have a reciprocal agreement with Korea. So basically, countries got together and said, hey, want to let your people travel around our country in exchange for our people traveling around your country? Everybody agreed, and they were on board. Does working as an online freelancer count as work that you can do? Yeah, I think that would be fine. I think that would be fine on a D10, on an H1 visa. You would just need to let immigration know. But that's exactly the kind of work that we're talking about. As I say that, let me also backtrack. And this should have been one of those things that I included in the expectations at the beginning. Some of this stuff is honestly going to depend on the mood of the immigration officer that day. I have done so much research into various different like visa Facebook groups and stuff like that, where people have shared their experiences. And if at first somebody says no, try again with a different person. Don't tell them that somebody already said no. But for something like this, it's oftentimes left up to interpretation of the visa officer, which sucks, which is what makes the Korean visa system so opaque, is there's no real like clear lines anywhere. So yes, in my opinion, that's exactly the kind of work that would be fine. If the immigration person is having a bad day, they may disagree with me. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles when it comes to visas and immigration. Okay, here's the list of the countries that allow or that have this kind of H1 holiday visa partnership, as well as the quotas. So you're going to want to look, if your country is, let's say Chile, if you're from Chile, there's only 100 people that are able to do this visa every year. I would recommend, just like I believe Trinity was thinking about, starting in January, get in early, get your documents in early, be one of the first ones to apply, to make sure that by like June, those 100 visas haven't already been given out. And again, you can stay for a year, so you get the full like 12-month experience. Okay, requirements, pretty straightforward. Valid passport, recent photograph, your visa application, proof of a round-trip airline ticket. They want to make sure that you're not going to overstay. Proof of financial support. This does not come with a like 3-month kind of contract. Or sorry, with like I just read the 3 months that's written there, with an exact like $10,000 number amount. It doesn't have that. It just says show 3 months. I would say for 3 months, to play it safe, $2,000 a month. It's probably average. You may want to give yourself a little bit more cushion. I wouldn't plan on doing it for less, just because you're there to enjoy your life. Enjoy it. Spend some money. Yeah, so I would say plan around that kind of budget. Everybody's lifestyle is different. That's just a ballpark. So you are going to need, oops, these didn't indent the way I wanted them to. Proof of student status or proof of the highest academic record, highest academic qualifications. This will be true if you are from Japan or the US, because the US or Japan has those same requirements for Korea. You're going to have to get a criminal record check if you're from Canada, New Zealand, or France, again, because those requirements go both ways. And if you are from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and France, you will need a medical exam. Both goes the same way. The process, you are going to gather your documents. This, I, again, would encourage you to do like, submit your application in like December if you want to get in January kind of thing. Again, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get your visa in general. Sometimes they're slower, sometimes they're faster, but that should give you a good ballpark of work backwards from when you want to go. Okay, 8 weeks before that is when I should apply, which means before that, you need to have gathered all of your documents, which don't underestimate how long it can take, guys. I was shocked at how long it took to gather my documents. And I left it way too late and I ended up being stressed. Okay, another question. Do you need to have paid for return flights, or is it okay to just submit an itinerary for return? I believe it is okay to submit just an itinerary for the return. But if you have not booked your flights, you will need to show sufficient funds plus the cost of the flight. So let's say that a flight is $1,000 and your sufficient funds to support yourself is $6,000. You will need to show $7,000. So you have your cost of living and money for the return flights to get you out of the country. If you have a return flight booked, you would only need to show the $6,000. Hopefully that made sense. Yes. So show that you have the itinerary and sufficient funds to pay for your exit. Trinity, I believe that answers your question. If it doesn't, feel free to shoot me a follow-up. Perfect. Okay. Make a visa at your local embassy. You cannot apply for this visa in Korea. This is not one of those ones where you can come as a tourist and then be like, I want to stay longer. Not allowed. But once you get approved, and again, as long as there's room in the quota, you should get approved unless you have like a criminal background check or something, which again, that isn't even required for everybody. So you should get approved. Book your flights and have a great time. Enjoy Korea. Welcome. E2 visa. This is the most common, I think, visa here. It is the visa that allows you to teach English. You can only do this if you're from a native English speaking country, which I kind of understand because I speak fluent Italian. And although I understand Italian and perfectly and can speak about whatever topics I want to speak about, I genuinely don't feel like I have the same grasp as I do in my native language. Other people may disagree because they've spoken a new language longer than they've spoken their native, whatever. But these are the rules. You have to be from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Ireland, South Africa, Australia, the USA, or the UK. Those are the requirements. And one of the helpful things with the E2 visa is there are tons of recruiters who help place applicants with jobs. It should not cost you anything. Beware of recruiter scams for any of this, all of these processes. Yeah, you should not be paying a recruiter. The company that hires you should be paying the recruiter. So they can be a great source of information, of expertise, and kind of really streamline the process to finding a school, getting a visa, stuff like that. And the last thing I'm going to point out here is make sure, please read your contract fully. You are going to be held to exactly what it says. The E2 visas, I don't know if I talk about it later. Well, let me pause then and I'll see if it comes up. Also check, there's a blacklist of schools. You can Google it, or again, it will be linked in the ebook that I have. Check the blacklist of schools to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. Doesn't mean that you're going to have the same experience, but it is important to know, were other people paid on time? What was their manager like? Really helpful information in terms of deciding if this is a place you want to work or not. Okay, your requirements. Then I don't have this up. So before I dive into the requirements, no, I'll do it at the end. Sorry. Okay. You must be from one of these 7 English-speaking native countries. I've already listed them before. You need to do a medical self-assessment. quite easy, self-assess. I looked at it, it's like, do you have any infectious diseases? It's pretty straightforward. Apostilled photocopy of a bachelor's degree. You need at least a bachelor's degree. If you have a master's or doctorate, cool, not required. You need a background check, and they will not let you in if you have any kind of criminal record, kind of across the board. So stay out of trouble, folks. You will need a resume. You will need a photocopy of your passport-sized photo. And then this last one is kind of from your school, notice of appointment and like employment contract. So showing that you have a job set up. And then most schools, this isn't necessarily a visa requirement, but most schools will require you to have some sort of TEFL certification, teaching English as a foreign language. So while may not always be a requirement, depending on the school, it will honestly just be really helpful for yourself. So that I taught English in Chile, and I've never been more intimidated in my life than I was by like these 14-year-old kids. Give yourself every advantage and certify yourself in teaching English. This is what I wanted to talk about. Decide what type of school you want to teach at. You kind of have three options here. One is a hagwon. That is an academy, an after-school academy, where plenty of parents will pay plenty of money to have their kids get like taught by an English speaker. They tend to, they're not really regulated, so it's a little bit of a grab bag in terms of like the work conditions, the work-life balance, stuff like that. Check the blacklist for the hagwons. You can teach at a public school. The Korean government has a program called EPIK, E-P-I-K, which can help you, which will place you with a school. But if you go through the EPIK program, you don't get to pick your location. You get assigned a location, which again, let me just put it in again. Consider places outside of Seoul. Korea has so much to offer. Yeah, it does. But Seoul seems to get all the credit and all the hype. You can also work through a recruiter or just normal job sites to find a public school job. If you're looking at just job sites and you don't want to go through a recruiter, you can Google it. You can buy my ebook, which has the list of recruiters in them. There's a website called Dave's ESL Cafe that will provide, it's like a job posting board for schools, not for like office jobs. You can also teach at a private institution. So like a foreign school, an international school, something like that. You cannot tutor. Do not tutor. You will be in trouble. It happens a lot where companies will approach English teachers and try and get them to tutor on the side and be like, hey, come tutor some of my students. And they have gotten deported. So do not tutor. You can get yourself into trouble. Apply for your visa once you have, apply for jobs. Once you found a job, apply for it, go through the whole interview process, that whole shebang. Then you apply for your visa. Then you can book your flights and move to Korea. The last visa that we're going to talk about today is the E7 visa. Now, this is the professional working visa. Only available for certain kinds of jobs and industries, but I looked and it includes most everything. Like it includes animal breeding and like agricultural experts, and it's got a whole wide range of options here. But it does have very complex requirements, which we will go into. So you need to have one of the three. Let me just explain this first. You need to have one of the three, or you need to have one of these, what is that, 6 that will exempt you from these 3. Okay, so this is like the bare minimum. You need to have a master's degree in the field you are looking to work in, a bachelor's degree plus 1 year of work experience, or more than 5 years of work experience in the field that you're being hired in. Now, these special qualifications will exempt you from the above: 1 year or more at a Fortune 500 company, graduated from one of the 200 universities, bachelor's degree from a domestic university, so any Korean university. If you're a high-tech intern on a D10, remember that job-seeking visa? D10-3. Each visa, by the way, has like a bunch of subcategories. So a D10-3 would be specifically for high-tech interns for a year, and your wages are equal to or greater than GNI. GNI stands for gross national income. It would need to be for the previous year. Last year's was $32,661. So you need to be making that amount or more. Have an employment recommendation from a ministry and an income of 1.5 times the GNI. So 32,661 times 1.5. What's that, like $45,000? Or a highly compensated professional talent, 3 times the GNI, so like 90 grand. You need to have one of these 3 or one of these to exempt you from the above. The general requirements that you will need: employment letter, company registration document showing the company's sales performance, employment contract, and tax certificate. Those are all provided by the company. And then a diploma, apostilled, and a document showing your past work experience. Again, you're going to have to verify this. So you're going to need some kind of diploma showing your degree and a document showing your work experience. The process: apply for jobs. Use sites, I mentioned them earlier, but I'll say them again. Saramin, People in Job, LinkedIn. Those are the main ones. There are job recruiters like Robert Walters, JAC. There's a few others. They're listed in the ebook guide. I just can't remember them all off the top of my head, to help you find a job. Then you're going to want to prepare your documents. Most of these are going to be provided by your employer, but just good to know. Then you're going to apply for your visa, and then you're going to book your flights and move. So again, I'll drop the link. Give me just a moment to pull it up. Let me stop sharing my screen because we are done with this. Anyway, before we turn it over to questions, the ebook is what it's the exact same information. It's really important to me personally that I provide as much value as I can for free. And again, if this is something that serves you, well, then it is something that you can take advantage of, but it is not like a requirement. It's got all of the exact information, probably laid out a little bit better because I'm not nervous when I'm writing, whereas I'm nervous right now. It has all of the information in there, checklists, all of the websites that you need, written out explanations, tons of detail, all that jazz. So that is there for you. Now, let's turn the time over for Q&A. What questions do you guys have for me? Is there anything I didn't cover that you would like to be covered further? Go ahead and ask away, and I will do my very best to answer your questions. Okay, let's see. Do you have any info about the E6 visa? Not at the moment. That is not one of the most common ones, but what I can do, Katerina, is send you, let me do this. Yeah, okay. I don't want you guys to see how many tabs I have open. It's honestly embarrassing. What I would do, and this would be true for any visa that I didn't talk about, because again, there's so many. The E6 visa, for those of you wondering, is like the entertainment visa. So here's what I do know. I shouldn't say that I don't know anything. I actually know quite a bit. So first thing you're going to do is you are going to find a company to sponsor your visa, just like anything else. You are going to want to be particularly careful with your contract. Read everything. Make sure that the terms are okay. A lot of people who end up kind of trapped in not great situations have been on E6 visas. This is not to discourage you. Lots of people have also come into Korea on great E6 visas. Think of every single foreign K-pop idol. They're on an E6 visa. or an F4. But you're going to want to find a company, do your research, see if they'll let you talk to any of the current people under an E6. There's also, I will send you a link, and I will also, there was an article in the Korea Times not too long ago. I'm going to see if I can find it right now about, oh my gosh, I just found it. Wow. I love it when things are on the front page. Where'd it go? Okay, hold on. This is all about E6 visas. Check that out. And that should give you a good place to start, at least more information about how to like find the jobs. And then for the actual requirements, this website, IMI Korea, it's not an official website. It is not an official website, but it is very helpful. It has a lot of information. So that would be for an E6. Okay, then let me scroll back up. Okay. How taxation works for H1 visas. If you're working as a freelancer, i.e. you're working for people outside of Korea, do you need to pay tax in Korea? Also, if you take a part-time job based in Korea, how does taxation work? Okay, I am not a tax expert. I did work on Wall Street, so I do know a bit about money and how it works. Check all of this with like an accountant or somebody official. So yes, anything that you do while working in Korea, while living in Korea will be taxed in Korea. This will most likely then lead to tax exemptions in your home country or wherever you are currently paying taxes. The Korean tax rate is pretty minimal. So there's a win. If you are a freelancer, you would probably just need to report your income manually since no one would be doing it for you through like the tax service. As of right now, you're not allowed to be employed full-time outside of Korea while in the country on an H1. They are looking at deploying a digital nomad visa, which is what that would be, employed full-time for a full-time company, salaried company at home while living in Korea. That they announced that like last year or 2 years ago, and there has not been any more updates. So I don't know if they forgot. I don't know if it's not happening. But that's as far as I know. Also, if you take a part-time job based in Korea, how does taxation work? So as far as I know, there's going to be like your standard tax, your income tax or whatever. I'm not sure about this. Don't quote me on this, but a standard full-time job would have things like unemployment insurance, medical insurance, things like that taken out, depending on the terms of your part-time job, whether you're getting insurances and stuff like that. You may have those deducted from your pay as well. If you are living in Korea, you need to be on their insurance unless you can prove private insurance, but I think that's pretty complicated to do. So you will most likely need to pay for Korean health insurance. It's pretty cheap. On my D4 visa, I'm paying $120 total for 6 months. I'm from the States. I don't know where you all are from, but that is like unbelievably cheap for me. So I hope that gave you a good place to start. Some resources to dig a little bit further. Check and see if there's any Facebook groups for, there's definitely Facebook groups for foreigners that I know talk a lot about taxes, and see what that's like. Let me know if that was helpful to you. Okay. Can I enter Korea with my 2 secondary kids with a school placement? Then how would I stay as a caregiver? I suppose you wouldn't be able to work. Okay. Amanda, I hope you don't mind if I ask a follow-up question here. So is your spouse working, or like, who is if you're staying, you can absolutely be a stay-at-home caregiver, take care of your kids, totally fine. If it's your spouse that's working, then yes, unless they are a Korean citizen, you will not be able to work. Can I enter Korea with my 2 secondary kids with school placement? So are you looking to teach English? Is that what you mean by school placement? Feel free to give me no spouse. Okay, that's helpful. So then is the school placement you're talking about you want to teach at a school? Because yes, you can do that. You can teach English and bring dependents. Your kids coming to study. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so if your kids are coming to study, you could not come as their dependent, I don't believe, because you're their parent, you're not their dependent. But what could happen is if your kids came to school, you couldn't come on their visa, but you could get your own visa that would allow you to come. So then you could get a D4 or a D2 or E2, E7, any of the ones that we talked about, and start working, but they couldn't come and study. Yes, your kids would need to apply as a student visa. How old are your kids? Let me first say this. Let's start with this. Are we talking like elementary, high school? 10 and 14. Okay. Amanda, I love this. You asked me a great question that I'm not 100% sure on. High school. Okay. They too then would need, there is not a student visa. Oh, a D2 might work because it might be considered like a study abroad, like a exchange program type of thing. So a D2 visa might work for them. You could not come as their dependent. They would each need to have individual proof of funds. I do know that there are high school kids who come and study in Korea, but they are often placed with like a host family. If they got D2 visas, and let's say you wanted to teach English in the meanwhile and came on an E2 visa, that would be acceptable. So I think that would probably be your best bet. Was that helpful? Let me know if that gave you at least a jumping off point of some things to consider. Or if you have any follow-up questions, I would love to answer that as well. Yes, an E2 visa, you would first need to find an employer. And as far as high schools go, all of the high schools here, keep this in mind, are pretty competitive. I was just talking to my boyfriend about this because we're probably going to get married. I'm getting married. And we were talking about like kids and their school options. Even for most high schools, there's tests to get in. At the international school, bingo. Okay, that's helpful. Still tests to get in, by the way, still tests to get in. But they are, oh, thank you. Still tests to get in, some quite long waiting lists, quite expensive. Again, not at all to discourage you. I'm just trying to give you some context to help you make a decision. Yes, they would need, I think, a D2 visa. You would need your own separate visa. You would need to source your visa first and like separate from theirs. Okay, I saw another question. Are you required to be enrolled in a university as well as the language school for the D4 visa? No. Great question, Shanique. You can just be enrolled in language school for a D4 visa. So that's about 20 hours a week. It does need to be like a decent program. They don't give out D4 visas, I don't think, for like once a day, 1 hour a day or anything like that. Like it's a relatively intense, rigorous program, but you do not need to be enrolled in like your own university degree apart from that. Okay, I think I answered. Okay, another question. Is it possible to get in South Korea through labor jobs and later change to other jobs? It can be challenging. Is it possible? Yes, it would give you a chance to network, start to find other people to. A lot of Korea, just like anywhere else, job hunting is a lot of networking, right? So being in Korea would allow you to do that. Some visas, and I think this would be one of them, would require you to leave the country and then come back, like leave the country, apply for your visa, and then come back. So that's something to consider if you want to have a labor job and then switch. Something I will say about labor jobs is they can be hit or miss, but lately, because Korea has such an educated population, there's actually more of a demand for labor jobs, and they're actually paid pretty on par with like Korean office jobs. They can be more dirty, more manual, laborious, obviously, but don't knock them, because my boyfriend works in shipping, and he works with a lot of people from the Philippines, and their pay is pretty good, better than like the average. Honestly, it's better than the average office worker. And the job, they work at sea, which is scary. I could never do it, but it's not like, it's not that bad of a gig, in my opinion. So don't knock the labor jobs. The interested in Busan. Yes, Shanique, come to Busan. Are you aware of a great language school? Yes, Busan National University is the one that I'm going to. There are a few others in Busan as well. Go ahead and let me see if I can do this too right now with you. If you Google Busan Korean Language Program, Busan National University comes up. Donga University, that's one that I know of and have heard of. There's a few that come up as I Google it. So give it a good Google search. I'm going to Busan National University. So that's the one that I can speak for the most. Okay, next question. On an E2 visa, how easy is it to legally freelance consult on the side too, in order to later transition to freelancing full time? Legally, you can't. If you're on an E2 visa, you're supposed to only do E2 visa work. Your company can provide permission for that to happen. They wouldn't necessarily know otherwise if you're working for people in other countries, as long as it doesn't interfere with your current job. I have not heard of too many companies being very open with allowing their employees to do like whole side hustle gig. It's not really a part of their culture. Where like I'm from in the States, everybody has a side hustle. So it may not be legal, but also keep in mind, if you want to freelance or consult in an area completely unrelated to education, I think it's fine. And I'm saying that unofficially. There's no way for them to really know. Don't work for, as long as you don't work like freelance for anybody in Korea, then they would know. If you keep everything out of the country, all the money out of the country and everything else like that, they wouldn't know. Wink, wink. Okay. Yeah. Honestly, again, Rhea, the labor jobs, the manufacturing jobs, some of them pay more than office workers, especially if you get into a good company. Hyundai, Samsung, any of these kinds of major companies are always, they're the most competitive, but they're also always looking for manufacturers, because again, everybody in Korea wants to work in an office. So there's so many office workers that the pay for them have gone down. And there's so few manufacturing workers that the pay for them has gone up. So it's kind of a good time to get into the labor market. Shanique, thanks. You're very welcome. What's the minimum rent USD for apartments in Busan? Let's say for 2 rooms. Okay. This is going to be a very wide ballpark. It will depend on the part of Busan and all of those kinds of things. The way that rental systems work here is you will often need a deposit. I have seen in Busan deposits as low as $1,000. Obviously, they can go to infinity. Monthly rent, you can probably do like 100 USD. First, that would be small, not 2 rooms. 2 rooms, I'd say 400 or 500 USD a month with a $1,000 to $5,000 deposit is what I would say. You would have to look when you arrive, not before. But if you look on, let me look at the app. Hold on. This can give you an idea. An idea. Do not take this too seriously. Let me find my home app that I used to look at, because I like looking at apartments for fun. Hold on, please. Jikban. There's a website or an app that you can download for free. And typing it out, but my Korean typing. It's called that. That'll give you an idea of kind of what's available. But remember, everything on the website is going to be inflated. So the price is going to, like, the pictures are going to look extra nice and the price is going to be dropped down a little bit. So always kind of, if you see something you like, always kind of add a little bit to the price. Yeah, I think that would be a good place to start to get you an idea. There's scams everywhere. Don't buy an apartment, don't rent an apartment until you see it. This can give you an idea for what is out there. But even then, like, it is so common where you will look at the pictures and say, go to then your real estate agent, say, hi, real estate agent, I'm interested in this apartment that I saw on this website. It said you were the real estate agent for that apartment. And they will say, great, that apartment's already gone. Let me show you what else I have. And then they'll show you all of their other apartments. Don't be afraid to be firm and be like, no, I don't want that. So don't buy anything until, or don't like sign any lease agreements until you have seen it in person. Even if you have a friend go and look for you, I've heard nightmares of rental issues. So yeah, for an 8-month stay, do you have any recommendations on the best thing to use to find an apartment? Is Airbnb a good option? Any Korea specific websites for short-term leases, maybe in a month or 2? Okay. Trinity, same kind of thing. Maybe I will go into, let me just take 2 seconds and explain the like rental structure here. So apartments often come with a large deposit, no matter how long you're staying there. The shorter your stay, it kind of depends. Sometimes the more your deposit will be because you're not a full year lease, guaranteed rent for the landlord. So your deposit will often be higher. Yeah, the deposits are crazy. Like in Seoul, this is a prime example of why I would encourage everybody to look outside of Seoul. I was looking for apartments with like a $10,000 deposit, $800 to $1,000 a month rent, and I was coming up with jack, man, nothing. So I went and did Airbnb for the 3 months that I was going to be in Seoul. Not that great of an apartment, first floor, not that much natural light, only a little bit of air conditioning. And that was $1,500 a month. It's absurd. Get outside of Seoul. And I mean, honestly, like for a decent apartment, you're going to need like $20,000 or $30,000 deposits with like $500 to $1,000 a month monthly rent in Seoul. Outside of Seoul, you can probably get $1,000 to $5,000 deposit for the same type of apartment with like $400 to $800 of monthly rent, $400 to $800 of monthly rent. Airbnb is a fine option. It's just an expensive option. If you do want to do the short-term lease route, Trinity, what you can do is you can get an Airbnb for a couple of weeks and then go into real estate agents, make sure they're licensed. You'll see them oftentimes, like these complexes are humongo ginormo. So there'll be like a ton of buildings And kind of at the main entrance, there will be a real estate agent, and they can go and they can show you what they have available. And if you explain your situation to them, they will be able to say, oh yes, this landlord will rent to you for 8 months, this one won't, et cetera, et cetera. And that would probably be a cheaper way to do it. Make sure any deposit, this is true for anybody, any deposit should be registered with your local, it's called a GU, like GU office. And what that is, it's like the community town hall for like that borough. So if you like think about New York, any New Yorkers in here? I'm from New Jersey, so this is the only way I can compare it to. If you think of like New York, it has different boroughs, Manhattan and Brooklyn and the Bronx and stuff like that. Each of those little boroughs will have their own like city hall administration office. That office is what I'm kind of talking about. It's like a borough office. Make sure any deposit you have is registered with them. That way it's insured by the government. So if your landlord goes broke, which happens all the freaking time, it's like such a huge deal. You get your deposit back because it will be insured. It will only be insured up to a certain amount. I think $20,000. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's currently been a huge thing in Korea where people there's a separate system, in case nobody asked, but in case anybody's interested. There's a separate system called Jeonse. And Jeonse is a system where you will put down 75 to 90% of the home's value. So if it's $1 million apartment in Seoul, which almost all apartments now are $1 million in Seoul, you're putting down $750,000 to $900,000. You are taking a loan out from the bank, giving it to the landlord with the hopes that they return it back to you so you can then pay off your loan. The reason why people do this is because the amount that they pay to the bank is less than they would pay in rent to the landlord, because in return for such a high deposit, you don't pay any rent. However, a lot of landlords are going bankrupt and they don't have the money to pay back the deposits. And therefore people are left with $750,000 loans with no asset. What I do in my actual job is I'm a financial coach. Now I used to work on Wall Street. I am not giving any financial advice, but this is such a bad financial decision. Do not do a Jeonse. Do not do it. It is such a bad decision. Okay. Rhea, sorry that didn't come through. It's called this, but with the Korean spelling. So I'm wondering if maybe the Korean spelling just didn't come across. Okay, let me try again. It's spelled like that in the App Store. I have a couple of others in case that doesn't work for you. Give me a second. The first one is the best from what I'm told, but then there's this. What is this one? It's Naver. I'm sorry, I need to wait for it. It's been so long since I've used them. It's like gone off my phone and I need to re-upload it. There's one for like Neighbor Homes, Neighbor Apartments or something. And then I think this is one as well. Oh, you know why you can't see it? Because I'm accidentally direct messaging Eden. Sorry, Eden. You've just been spammed by me. Jikbang. Let me give you the Korean spelling. Was everything I was sending was going to Eden? Do I need to redrop in all of those links too? Let me see, hold on a second.
You all good.
Okay, so sorry, apologies. Okay, that went to everyone. Okay, that's the main app. Okay, let me just double check and make sure I got everybody's questions. Yes, I agree, Amanda. The deposits are freaking bananas. Corporate, yes. If you can come with corporate relocation, guys, that's your best bet. They'll often pay for your move, the deposit for your apartment, as well as potentially some housing stipend and a stipend for your kids to go to school. So if you can come that way, that is ideal. Yes, that looks about right. Let me double check the website. Let me double check that is the logo on my phone. Yep, that's 100% it. Oh, look, Park Seo-joon, don't we love him? Yes, that is the website, Jomana. Okay, guys, any other questions?
I'm sorry for coming off mute. Dana, did you see my questions with regards to the E2 visa?
Nope, I missed it. Let me
Okay, I thought they weren't going through, so that's okay. I think my internet's sucking a little bit. So my query is with regards to the E2s, how long they actually last. Because, like, as example, I currently live in Australia. I'm South African, but I currently live in Australia. And some of the visas only allow you for like a 2-year stint at a time. So if that is, how long does that E2 visa last? Can it be renewed, and is there a limit to how much it can be renewed?
Okay, great questions. No limits to how long it can be renewed. I know people who have stayed on visas for like E2 visas, 7-8 years. Your visa will be tied to your employment contract. Most of the employment contracts are 1 year long. I have not seen any for less than 1 year. So basically what would happen is you would come for 1 year, your visa would be good for 1 year. You would work your contract. And then if you wanted to renew your employment contract, you would then renew your visa. If you wanted to switch jobs and get a new work for a new school, you would do that. And then like have your visa renewed kind of that way through your new school. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. And then like with that E2, if it was just for a year of contract, if the company or the school decided to do like a permanent position, would it still kind of fall under an E2 visa, even though it doesn't have an end date on the company contract?
Yes, it would still fall under an E2 visa. Your visa would still have some kind of expiry date. And you would just need to renew that visa. For example, even if you marry a Korean citizen, like I am planning to do, my visa will be a Korean spouse visa, which is like you can do work and stay for whatever you want. However, it will still have an expiration date of a year. And then after you've been here for 5 years, sometimes they will push the visa expiration date out instead of 1 year to 2 years, but you still have to go through this whole renewal process. Yeah. After potentially, sorry, go ahead.
No, carry on.
Potentially after 5 years, depending on the points system, you can potentially qualify for permanent residency, depending on your Korean skills and your education and all of these kinds of things, if you wanted to stay without any kind of limitations. That would be an option after residing in the country for 5 years or so. And that would be an F2 visa if you need to look up more about that.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the last one that I had was with the E2, if there's any other restrictions, like will they allow me to still study like part-time and do my own thing and stuff like that? Is there any?
Yeah,
okay,
that's
perfect.
Fine. That's awesome. Fine. You can do any of that kind of stuff. They're just more strict about like the work.
Perfect. Stuff. Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any other questions that I can help you with, or any other, it doesn't even have to be a question, any insights you want, thoughts? I'm happy to stick around for as long as you guys need. Okay, then this recording, just a heads up, probably you'll get an email from me Friday, maybe. So you must have an employer to apply to teach English. So your employer would be the school that you are going to teach English at. That's what you need before you can apply for a visa. You need to have an English teaching job to show that, to like show to the Korean government, hey, Korean government, I'm here to teach English. Look, they've offered me a job. So yes, you must have an employer. You must be accepted to university, whatever, before you go through any of this like visa process, because they are the ones sponsoring your visa. So I can't enter then within 90 days source employment. Nope, you cannot enter on a tourist visa and get employment. The visas that you can enter on a tourist visa and switch to are very, very limited. Your passport allows you 90 days. That's the tourist bit, but you cannot just switch to different visas. They're very, very, very particular. What you can do is you can come on a D10 and look for work. Is if you meet like the D10 requirements, you can come on the D10 requirements, look for work, and then switch to E2, E7, E6, any of those E visas after that. Is that helpful, Amanda? Any other follow-up questions? Yep, okay. Any last minute questions, guys? I'm happy to keep going. I love talking about this stuff. I think it's fun. Okay, then with that, I'm going to end this recording. I think I'm gonna just upload it to YouTube so that you guys can watch it easily whenever you want. Give me like until Friday or so to do that. You will get an email with a link once it's done. And yeah, I hope this has been really helpful. Feel free to shoot me DMs anytime, and I will talk to you guys very soon. Have a great evening, day, afternoon, whatever it is for you guys. Bye.